What's up, Warriors? So today I wanted to make a quick video for you and go over some news stories that I found while perusing the internet this morning. Pretty interesting, and I wanted to talk about them a little bit. So what we got first here is mortgage rates were supposed to come down. Instead, they're rising. Here's why. Mortgage rates are ticking up even after Federal Reserve has started cutting interest rates. Here's why. And where rates and home sales could go from here. You might expect that mortgage rates would be falling right now after the Federal Reserve cut interest rates by 0.5 point last month. Instead, mortgage rates jump higher. The latest data from Freddie Mac showed that the average 30-year mortgage rate had increased to 6.4, more than 1/4 point higher than it was 2 weeks ago. The news is probably an unwelcoming surprise to folks who had been hoping for lower interest rates to finally come off the sidelines and start shopping for a home. Here's what's going on and what it means for those trying to buy a home now. The Fed doesn't set mortgage rates. I mean, that's pretty obvious to anybody who knows anything about finance. Just because the Federal Reserve cuts rates doesn't mean that it's really going to change the housing market. We're in an era now, especially after the whole, pandemic, where people price gouge, right? And they get every dollar they can out of you, everything they can from any kind of transaction. So why would the housing market, which is completely separate from the Federal Reserve, just because the Federal Reserve drops interest rates doesn't mean these homeowners have to drop their interest rates, because those interest rates are completely dependent on that specific loan company. So anybody who's loaning that money out can decide what that interest rate's going to be. It's not affected by whether or not the Federal Reserve says it's going to be this low. Yes, there is FHA loans, which are government-backed loans, but the government doesn't really care about what a private corporation is putting interest-wise onto your loan. They can't control that. Interest rates are purely based on how much interest the money that the United States government is borrowing from the Federal Reserve, that is what that is, right? So when they say interest rates, they're talking about the interest rates that are put on the US dollar when it's being loaned to the United States government. As far as interest rates from the Federal Reserve are concerned, that means nothing for people like you and me, for the average citizen, because these private companies, or these companies that are independent or have big monopolies over food, housing, things like that, they don't have to adhere to the rules. The government, the federal rate cuts, that's not their job. Their job is to continue to make as much money as they can possibly off of you. Continuing on. Here's the thing, the Fed can influence mortgage rates, but it doesn't set them. Instead, mortgage rates mainly follow a different number, the yield on 10-year Treasury bonds. That yield has gone up recently for a number of reasons, including because investors are expecting the Fed to be a little more cautious in cutting rates after the jumbo size cut last month. But it's not just the 10-year Treasury yield influencing mortgage rates. The mortgage lender needs to cover its costs and make profit, so it adds its own percentage on top, for example, i.e. what I just said to you. And the specific mortgage rate that you get will depend on your own factors, like your credit score and the size and type of loan you're getting. That said, despite the recent uptick, mortgage rates are still more than a full point lower than they were this time last year, falling as investors anticipate the Fed's rate cuts and factored those into 10-year Treasury yield. The lower mortgage rates compared to a year ago have been good for some home owners Lots of people have taken advantage to refinance their mortgages if they bought their homes in the last couple of years when rates were high. The lower rates available now mean those homeowners can potentially save hundreds of dollars a month if they refinance. Where mortgage rates go from here. So, where are mortgage rates headed? That's difficult to answer since mortgage rates are affected by so many factors. But there's one thing that experts generally agree on. They likely won't go anywhere near the levels of a few years ago. In 2019, for example, rates for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage ranged from about 3.75% to 4.5%, and they dropped to as low as 2.65% in early 2021. That's pretty crazy, guys. I'm just going to tell you right now, that's like as low as you would possibly ever get. Many forecasts have rates near 6% at the end of this year and falling to about 5.8% next year. I think the new normal is maybe 6% mortgage rate, says Lawrence Young. That's really high, guys. 6% is like ridiculous, the amount it adds on to your monthly payment. Some people, you'll never be able to get to the house that you want. The chief economist at the National Association of Realtors. If we are lucky, maybe we get to 5.5% mortgage rates. Or if we are unlucky, maybe the mortgage rates trend back up towards 7%, which they're currently doing. But Young is confident of one thing. The days of 3% and 4% mortgage rates are over, at least in his lifetime. Okay, so that means it's over, like, all around for all of us. They're never coming back. They pretty much just told us that. So what do you do now? For home buyers, the ever-shifting rate environment can foster uncertainty. Is it better to wait for mortgage rates to fall or start looking now? Experts advise against trying to time the market, including when it comes to buying a home. That's for two reasons. First, if you buy a home and then mortgage rates do fall, you can refinance your mortgage and take advantage of the lower rate. But if you wait and rates go up, it just gets harder to afford a home. Second, home prices do tend to rise over time. Young says that even home buyers who bought homes at much higher mortgage rates, like 15%, in the early 1980s have typically had those purchases turn out well because of rising home values and the ability to refinance as rates fell. Okay, let me say something real quick before we continue. If you got a 15% interest rate on a loan now, there would be no point in ever even buying a house. You wouldn't even be able to afford the first monthly payment or anything like that. 15% in the 1980s compared to now, it's almost diabolical in comparison. It's astronomical. You wouldn't be able to even fathom paying 15% on a $400,000 house, or let's be even more modest, maybe a $250,000 house, which is what, generally a turnkey or a livable without too much work house cost is in this area. Southwestern Pennsylvania probably has one of the cheapest housing prices out of maybe most of America. Maybe not all America, but seems like most of America. These prices for these houses around here are generally lower. So you're looking at least $250,000 for a house, a decent house that has 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and is turnkey. That house with a 15% mortgage rate, your monthly payment, you're probably looking at $3,000, $4,000. I'm not a math whiz with percentages here, but it's ridiculously high. You'd be better off just renting at that point. How's the housing market looking? There's some good news. Here's a positive development for buyers. There's more inventory now. The number of homes for sale in September was 6.4% higher than a month earlier and 33.6% above a year ago, according to a report from the brokerage Remax, which looked at single-family homes in 52 markets. You know why they're on sale? Because people can't afford their mortgages anymore because they've gotten so ridiculous. Because they want to charge people think they can handle a $350,000 house with a 7% mortgage rate. And generally, if you aren't making over $100,000, then you're not going to be able to afford that in the long term, especially if you're just on one income. Meanwhile, the days a house stays on the market have been increased, suggesting the market is getting a bit less competitive. I think there is more opportunity for buyers to get in there, says Sarah Braceno-Garish, a real estate agent in San Antonio. And there's another indicator showing fewer buyers to compete against. The number of people applying for mortgages has fallen for 3 straight weeks, though it's still 7% above this time last year. But home prices remain high. Mortgage rates aren't the only factor affecting the housing market. Home prices matter too, and unfortunately for buyers, those remain high. The median home price has risen about 50% since early 2020, with a major spike during the pandemic. The price increases have slowed, but prices haven't really dropped. The median existing home sales price in August was $416,700. It's a lot of money for just your average house. About 3% higher than a year earlier, showing the stickiness of high prices. The season also has an impact. Home buying picks up in the spring and peaks in June, as warm weather and the end of the school year encourage people to shop. The market typically slows in late summer and throughout the fall, reaching its slowest period during the winter. That can make fall a good time to shop, that is, if you can find a home that fits your needs. Less competition can mean lower prices and more ability to negotiate. Fannie Mae is predicting that home sales could be 10% higher next year, coming off the very low levels we've been seeing. It could be spring before the market really picks up. There you go. They're letting you know that the housing market is not doing well, which most of us who pay attention even just a little bit to what goes on in the news and the finance world, we already knew that the housing market wasn't doing well, especially people who are already homeowners and have just recently refinanced and just went through the process of buying a home, i.e. exactly what I went through April of 2022. And the mortgage rates then were about I got in at like a 6.75. That's high. That's really high. That still made things not really manageable. But it wasn't at the point where it was like I couldn't even afford it. If it went anything higher than that, I would have been at that point. And I recently here just refinanced and got down to 5.75. Luckily, I did that right when I heard that people were saying that the rates were going to be lower because the Fed was going to cut interest rates. And I knew that that wouldn't last long, right? I knew that there was only going to be a little window of opportunity before they actually announced it that these rates would drop. And that proved to be true here, okay? Because I called before they even announced that the rates were going to drop. They were just anticipated to drop. So that's where our interest levels on these lenders and the mortgage lenders, their rates dropped. Now they're saying, a couple months after this announcement about the Fed dropping rates, that these rates are beginning to go back up because they realize that cutting by 0.5% or 0.25 percentage point isn't going to do anything at all realistically to the housing market, which is already suffering. So this is just, I'm not a finance guy. I'm not like, this isn't what my channel is focused on, but this is very important to see the trend of the way the world is going and the way we're navigating through this new era that we have been thrown into, as far as like I said, after the pandemic, and how things are with supply and demand now, even in your housing markets. So I believe that here soon, people are really, they said so many houses are on the market, and your average house is selling for over $400,000. That's to most people, that is completely unattainable. And to most families, that's completely unattainable. You see these people on social media with these houses and all this other stuff. This isn't a large percent of people. Go down to your small town or to a neighborhood in a bigger city, and you'll see most people are struggling to get by. And this doesn't have to do with politics, because politics is in no way going to shape how this monetary system is going to help us. This is completely built to destroy us. This is completely built to make us debt slaves, so that only a certain percentage is able to achieve, a comfortable lifestyle, comfortable wealth, from here on out. They gave us some time there where you could maybe live in comfort. The middle class could exist, and there could be some comfort found for the average Joe. Now, that's gone. That's done away with. They're definitely separating the classes here, and they're going to, get both of these classes to agree. We should make life easier for ourselves. How do we do that? Digital ID, beast system, rope us all into one thing, like make it a fair market, make it so everybody has a chance to live a comfortable life, like the good old days. That's what they'll try and throw out there. So that's what we're dealing with now, and this is just the way the world's going to continue to trend. This is showing you, they're showing you what is to come here. This housing market's going to fall, and then once the housing market falls, well, the economy falls as well. And you think, oh, just because the economy exploded and that the housing market exploded, that you don't have any financial responsibility then to your mortgage lender or to your whoever may have given you the funds, which actually is false, because you know who it's going to go to. It's going to go to the federal government. And when the federal government takes hold of that, and oversees that responsibility, well, guess what? They're not really playing ball the same way that these mortgage lenders, private companies, are regulated to play ball with you legally. The government doesn't operate off of legality. They do what they feel is necessary and what they want to do and what they want to achieve. They don't do it based off of legal standards, especially in times of emergency. So just be aware, when the emergencies come around, when the housing markets are collapsed, when the financial institutions are collapsed, all by design, by the way. None of these people are going to be caught off guard. None of these CEOs or owners or big banksters are ever going to be caught off guard by this. They all know what's going on. So whenever that happens, and then the common man is caught off guard, they will then execute their power move where they have ownership over your house, your property, which they already have ownership over your property. You don't own your property in the United States. It's impossible to fully own your own land because property taxes. So they will take on that whole role as your lender. And let's say you can't afford the astronomical prices anymore. Guess they're just going to take over your house. Probably give it to a few immigrants that came over the border not too long ago. And like I said, I always like to preach this. I don't have anything against people who migrate here, even people who illegally migrate here, because at this point, this is all by design, and nobody's going to stop it. These people are given thousands and thousands of dollars to come here. They're given all this free stuff to come here. If you were able to obtain that and not have to struggle or live in a environment where you are living in, pretty terrible conditions, or even moderately bad conditions, wouldn't you just take that chance if that's what you could achieve? So don't hate these people for coming over here. America's doing it to us. It's not them, it's America. Or I wouldn't even say it's America, it's our government doing it. So be mad at the government, not at them. That's all I got for today. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a comment if you think that this is going to change at all. If you think that this is just a sham, or if you really think that the market is going to come back. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. With that, I'm going to go ahead and go. But I love you all. God bless, and go in peace. This is Jay out.